Yo, Nino, your microphone. There you go. Woo, she's learning. Talk so I can hear you. Say something so I can hear you, Nina.
Testing, microphone checker. 1, 2, checker.
She's gonna say that when she comes on. Welcome everybody to episode 2 of Access Granted. It's your boy, Mr. Antoine, and I am in the building again with my sister, my radio seed, Nina, the original party. What's going on, honey bunny? So I can't say that
a whole lot of everything.
Say that again.
A whole lot of everything.
A whole lot of everything. So I can't say that we're going too far.
You know, I say that every week.
Yeah, right. I can't say that we're going too far off of the grid tonight because this is our second show, so we don't even know exactly what the grid is going to be.
What the show's about, right?
What it's going to be about.
This is about the show.
Yeah, this is about the show.
Perfect.
During these days and times, man, we've been going through this pandemic, and Nina came to me, what was it, yesterday, and said we need to do a panel discussion. Day before yesterday, give or take. But and it's funny because the longer or the more that I've thought about it, the more I realize how important it is to do a show like this because I don't see it being talked about a lot. As far as the kind of media that we do, you know what I mean?
Exactly.
And being as though we're in a situation where stuff is being shut down again, record-breaking numbers of deaths and admittances into the hospital and all of that stuff. This is like the perfect opportunity to have this conversation. So I said, why not? And then when you came to me and told me that Terry wanted to do this, I was like, man, if we'd have had somebody else scheduled, then we'd have had to kick him off because Terry is my boy, and we gotta, you know what I'm saying, show him some love, man. So yeah, we're gonna have a real serious conversation tonight, man, and I'm very honored to have the panelists that we have tonight. This is going to be a very interesting conversation from 3 different perspectives. And I'm just really looking forward to what we have. So I am going to bring them all in now. Bingo.
Hello, everybody.
Hi. So
what's up?
Hey, Terry, what's going on, bro? So what I'm going to have everybody do, man, is I'm going to have you all introduce yourselves, tell a little bit about what it is that you do. And then I'm going to let Nina just kind of, go ahead and do her thing, and we'll take it from there. So ladies first, Crystal, in alphabetical order, we'll start with you.
So, hey, everybody, how you doing?
Hi, Crystal.
Hi, I'm Crystal. So I'm a social worker at a local hospital. I'm a case manager / discharge planner. My assignment is on the critical care unit. So all of my patients are COVID patients. I treat the critically ill, the ones that are vented, trached, and the ones that are able to discharge home. My job as the case manager and discharge planner is to move the cases along. What everybody don't know is a lot of times the hospital has a goal to try to keep the patients there in a certain amount of time. Once we stabilize the patients, our job as the case manager is to try to find an alternative placement for those COVID patients, whether it's an LTAC or it's a home or a quarantine hotel. We have to set up equipment for them. So I do a lot. I work closely with the doctors, the nurses, the rehab team to try to get these patients back to the community and out of the hospital. So it's overwhelming. Been rocking out since March. It's a lot. It's a lot. So every day I drive home, I'm like, oh gosh, I dodged COVID. So, knock on wood, I haven't tested positive. So I must be doing something right working in the hospital. I work in the unit every day. So yeah.
You have quite a commute, so you have a lot of time to think about that when you're driving home.
Mm-hmm.
Tracey.
Hello, everyone.
Hi,
My name is Tracey. How are you? And thank you so much for having me. I'm actually a nurse of 20 years. I currently have taken a reassignment. Normally, I do home care. So I have currently been working at not a local facility, but I've been working down in DC. In DC, I work on a unit with patients that are COVID positive. However, it's outpatient. I am currently administering a research drug, and actually, my patients receive the antibodies. My patients have mild to moderate symptoms, so they're at home. So they come in and they get their infusion of antibodies, and then they go home. And then we just kind of watch them and hopefully hoping and praying that they don't get any sicker. Um, and I kind of want to just leave it at that, and then we can kind of, if you got questions, and we'll get more into it, especially what I do.
Gotcha.
And then my brother Terry, introduce yourself, man.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Antoine, Terry T slash DJ slash promoter. Been in the field for a very long time. Have a very large following. I was actually a person who suffered from the coronavirus. So I'm here to share my point of view about it, as well as trying to convince people that the pain is real and try to get them tips on how to at least stay healthy and refrain from catching.
Absolutely. Nina, yes, go. I'll follow you.
Hi, I'm Nina, the
Hey, Nina.
original party girl. I am currently going through a personal COVID crisis with one of my family members. Some of my friends. I have like 5 of my best friends at St. Agnes Hospital currently, right now, while we are speaking today. And several friends that have contracted the condition, friends that have passed away from the condition. And I felt that this was a great panel to get all the different ways of everything's affected. Now, through my personal crisis, social worker, excellent. We haven't gotten to that stage yet. Nurse, excellent. We haven't really had communication with the nurse. So I like how this is. I have another guest that's supposed to pop in at 5. So we have Terry that had COVID. We have the social worker. We have the nurse, and we have someone that's a caretaker for someone with COVID. So that should kind of give us a big circle to have this conversation. So I wanted to thank each and every one of you for being able to be available so quickly and to share your story. I feel like we are not hearing a complete conversation. And when you're scrolling on Facebook, you see somebody that passed away or somebody that lost someone that was special to them, but we're not talking about the complete process as well as preventative methods that will help everybody. I feel like everybody can get something from this show. So again, I thank you all for being here. Antoine?
Thank you.
So Terry, I want to start with you because the one thing that I've kind of gotten from our people over these past few months is it's almost like a situation where they don't believe this is real until it touches a little bit close to home. You know what I mean? We have this tendency to believe that everything is like a conspiracy. The government is out to get us every single day. It's not real. The statistics are being padded, so on and so forth. So I just want you to start, Terry, by talking a little bit about your experience. How you felt in the beginning? What, did you go get tested before you were feeling bad? Did you start feeling bad and go get tested? Talk a little bit about your experience going through the virus.
All right. So again, my name's Terry. In the early stages, with my experience with the COVID, is I started having headaches, and we have internal security system in our bodies to let us know when something is not right. And when I started having these headaches, I was telling my wife that I wasn't feeling well, and then I started getting like scratchy throat a little bit. And at that time, a close friend of mine told me he had COVID and had just, left his presence maybe like a few days prior to. So when I went and got tested, I got my test back like in maybe less than 24 hours, and I was positive for the COVID.
Terry,
Yeah.
without divulging their identity, do you know how or where you contracted COVID from?
Yes.
You do? Okay, go ahead.
So once I, again was positive with the COVID, I started like alerting the people that I've been around, and I work for an inpatient drug treatment facility. So of course I have to let them know. I had a party scheduled at the time, which was Sean Marshall's birthday party. I had to cancel that, and it's like people just couldn't believe it was real. And the saddest part is that when people contract this disease, they think it's a secret they shouldn't tell nobody.
It has a stigma, yes.
When it can happen to anybody. But like I said, I started like getting the chills, hot and cold sweats. I even fell out. I passed out. My insurance, I had pretty good insurance. So I had like doctors call me like every day, ask me how I feel, ask me what was my temperature, my pulse, and it's like they be trying to guess or figure out this thing like I was trying to do. It's like I was just, like man experimenting on verbally, because they were like trying to figure out what's going on and what, did I have any new symptoms? One of the symptoms they kept on asking me about was it hard for me to wake up? And I kept asking them, why would they ask me that? And they said that's a new symptom, that it's hard for people to wake up once they fall asleep. So as a DJ / promoter, of course I could have been selfish, didn't say anything, and went on with the party, just didn't show up. But when it become personal, like Antoine was saying, when it hit home, and you feel the pain, you want to at least, well, I know I did, I at least want to save other people from going through that pain and possibly dying, because I didn't have it as severe as I heard, a lot of people had it at the time. So I was blessed, and I had a few friends, but I started speaking up about it. So I had friends telling me what kind of vitamins to get, telling me to buy certain kinds of tea, inhale heat, told me that the heat can like kill the virus, and trying to prevent it from getting to the lungs. So I was doing all different kinds of things. Then the doctors was telling me to go outside. It's important that I get in the sun, if I can walk a little bit in the sun for like 20 minutes, like take 20-minute walks and things of that nature.
So let me ask you this.
Okay, so what month? What month did you contract COVID?
July.
Okay.
July. And from start to finish, how long was your episode?
And that's a good question, Nina. I say like at the day 8, I started feeling good. I started back mixing, but the virus was still there. I tested positive up to like 3 weeks. But the interesting thing is that when the 2-week mark hit and I still tested positive, the doctors were telling me that I'm released to go back to work, because they said I was no longer contagious, even though I had the virus in me. They said I was no longer contagious, and I couldn't understand.
Okay, so in your process, was there a time when you literally thought you were going to die?
Yes, when I woke up on the floor,
That'll do it.
I was actually trying to like make it back to the bed, because in a home that me and my wife live in, we have like a studio, cave on one end, studio on the other end, and so I was separated from her, and even she caught it, but she didn't go through the pain and withdrawals like I went through. You know, she ended up having what they call antibodies, and you know, after the fact, so she really didn't know if she had it or not. But anyway, to answer your question, at that point when I fell out, you know, that's when it got kind of scary for me. And the doctors, they were trying to like encourage me to go to the hospital, but I didn't want to go to the hospital because I thought maybe if I go to the hospital, it might get worse. You know, and sometimes that's how we think because I knew everybody that was going to the hospital, they wasn't coming home. You know, and I thank God that I have an awesome wife because she had everything prepared for me. She making meals, setting for me at the basement door where I go to the steps and grab the meals. You know, all the vitamins and things of that nature.
So did you like, okay, so when you actually were going through your symptoms and feeling bad, like how did you eat? Like was your wife passing plates through the door or how were you taken care of? Were you able to do it yourself? What was a part of how you were actually taken care of? Who did that, if anybody?
Well, my wife was making big pots of soup at a time where she didn't have to keep like all day long coming back to me. She fixed me enough food for like 2 days at a time. Big pots of tea. I can just warm the tea up and take it. So I was like when I the strange part I was strong. I had strength in the daytime, but at night it's like that's when it really come on. At night for some reason when it get dark. Oh my goodness! So during the daytime I would eat and drink a lot of water and move around because I know when the night comes it get worse. So that's exactly what I've done.
Okay, so good stuff. Thank you for sharing. If I can ask, do you have any pre-existing situations? Do you have asthma or any issues other than that the COVID latched onto, or was straight COVID? If you feel like answering that.
No, just a little crazy. It might enhance my craziness, you know.
Oh, okay. Okay, I get that. Do you feel like music was a part of what? Did you feel like you had to fight to stay alive? And if you did, what held you focused that I gotta get better? I gotta do what I gotta do.
Well, you hit it. It was the music, you know, because at
Figures.
day 8, when I had enough strength to stand up, I started playing the music, you know, and listening to music. As a matter of fact, I had my laptop on the other side of the basement with me where I was where I had a bed at resting. So at night I just listen to like different sounds and things of that nature, you know. And the interesting thing is that I still have what they call a long-term effect where my energy is like low, you know, and
still not back to 100.
No, and that's been since July.
Are you still taking the teas, the herbals, the vitamins? Are you still doing that?
Absolutely, and that was one thing the doctors told me. They were telling me, you know, that for me to continue to take them and to give them to like my family and tell them to take them too, even if they didn't have it, just take it. You know, so
just take it.
The vitamin C, vitamin D, these purple gummies I take, elderberries,
okay.
and I take another pill called black seed oil. So I've been doing that ever since I caught it. You know.
Have you taken sea moss at all?
Sea moss?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a jar of it. I tasted it, but I didn't continue on with it.
Yeah, I don't blame you. I understand that totally.
Did you lose any weight?
Yeah, when I was sick. Yeah.
Okay. So at what point, this is all good stuff, and I'm so glad you're here to tell a story. You have an entertainment piece that you mentioned in your intro. You are a DJ and a promoter. And at any time, you can be in a party with hundreds of people. You were responsible enough to remove yourself from that situation. I am sure there were people that chose to not admit that they had anything, or they knew they had it and they continued to be in the party. How have you seen the industry change because of COVID?
Well, and I don't say this to be mean, and I don't like to sound like I'm better than, but it's I seen the cruelty part of it because I see certain DJs or promoters who have followings that 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 love for people to, people love to come see them play. And even at this time, when they telling you they shutting the city down, they shutting places down, and you would think that the DJ slash promoters would want to protect their supporters, but it's not like that. And they tell them and they encourage them to come on out. And I see on Facebook and Instagram all the time where people asking for people to pray for their families and things like that. So I just thank God that I grew through the pain and I have enough common sense for myself and for others to encourage them not to come out and to speak against it. Because people be asking me all the time, like, "Well, aren't you losing money by not having parties?" I say, "No, I'm saving lives." When you chase money, when you chasing money, you liable to do anything. You know, so it's it. I seen the cruelty part of it. As a matter of fact, I haven't even seen many DJs speaking up about it at all. I have seen DJ techniques. I always used to see them post things, telling people to don't go out,
Wear a mask.
and,
Yeah, he's the wear a mask guy.
right.
Yes. So that could have been terrible. Like if they didn't shut down the clubs, that could have been made a major impact on how many people could have been affected. And I'm glad that the club scene on the whole is they're not trying to force a party. I saw like maybe 2 parties that came out, and I'm like, well, I'm not sure about that. But they actually ended up getting canceled, so that worked out by itself. So I thank you for your contribution to this conversation. What has having COVID done to your life going forward?
Well, it lets me know that I'm not exempt from anything that I see that's happening in the world, and that I need to make better decisions and protect myself. Well, in some situations like the COVID, oh my goodness, my wife used to have me wearing masks, gloves, got the Lysol wipes everywhere we go, but I still contracted it. So it just lets me know that I'm not exempt from it. And if I can save my life and somebody else's, that's what I'm willing to do.
Gotcha. Twan, you have anything for Terry?
No, I wanna get Tracey's perspective. Being in the front lines.
Gotcha.
Talk a little bit about what you see on a day to day, and talk a little bit about how it's changed from like February, March, April when this first started to now.
Well, it changed for me because back in March, I guess it really had to do with more of what my role was. So back in March, I took on a role where I was just doing testing. So I was just testing patient after patient every single day. And at that time, we had the ability to mass test patients at that time. So you're right, we were testing everyone. But now my role has now changed because now we have even broader testing. So now I'm down in DC. I work with COVID patients and they're at home and they have mild to no symptoms. However, in order for them to be in this research and to be in this study, their onset of symptoms have to be less than 10 days. So not 10 days from being tested positive, but from the onset of first symptom. And at that point, they can probably not everyone will be able to get it, but this group of patients then can get an infusion of antibodies. I tell my patients the goal of this antibody for me as a nurse, that you don't get any sicker, that your disease do not progress to the point that you are now have to be hospitalized and be intubated. So
Tracey, quick question.
Yes.
Quick question.
Yeah.
So from the onset, they have to have 10 days from when they were diagnosed. Did they ever have full-blown COVID and it's better now? Or they only had it to a certain level where they weren't as symptomatic?
Okay. So my patients, they're symptomatic, but they're mild symptoms. And their symptoms have only been for about less than 10 days. Because anything over 10 days, then you wouldn't be able to get the antibodies. That's not an option
Okay,
for
can you define antibodies for me, please? What's an antibody?
Wow, so the drug that I'm giving is a synthetic form of COVID. The antibodies aren't coming from an actual person who had COVID, who might have given plasma. Some people have gotten antibodies to getting plasma from somebody who had COVID. In this situation, this is a synthetic form of the antibodies. And the goal is that
and
you
are
already...
you in a test research?
Yes.
I'm sorry, Tracey.
Yes,
this is a
it
testing
This is a
situation.
research. This is research.
Okay.
Yes.
And
Yes.
these people that you're working with, they have signed up to be a part of the research.
Yes, they
What's the
volunteer.
benefits for them? If they
The
don't really have COVID a whole bunch, what's the benefit of doing that for that group of people?
You know, the benefit, it's a lot of benefits. Because the one thing, once you get COVID, and Terry kind of alluded to this, once he got COVID, remember he mentioned that doctors were calling him every day to find out what's happening. Because the reason why that is because as a healthcare professional, doctor or nurse, what I can't tell you is that once you get COVID, I don't know who's going to be the sickest. I don't know if you get COVID and you have mild symptoms for 10 days and then, or 14 days and you're done. However, we see that somebody else can get COVID and they're now in the ICU and they're intubated. That's the one thing no one can, as a healthcare professional, can determine who those people are. So that's one of the benefits, is that you now tested positive for COVID, and there's a fear there because now you have to ask yourself, what now? I have COVID, my symptoms are mild. Yeah, I'm kind of laying around, I'm tired. But then at what point does that take a turn for the worse? Nobody can say when that time is, which is why Terry.
So people that have mild COVID, true or false, do they normally not have a pre-existing condition? Is that what makes COVID worse? Because it's tagging on to what you already have.
Yes and no.
Okay.
Because you're right. You can get a person who don't have, we look at children. We look at young adults who've tested positive, who may not have any pre-existing conditions. But we also know that a person who's a diabetic, that is one of the number one reasons of people being really sick. Those people are diabetics. Or also have underlying other condition, heart disease.
High blood pressure.
However,
all the stuff we have.
Right. But however, can I tell the person who's diabetic, you know what, your COVID is going to be the worst? We don't know until we monitor you and watch you, which is why Terry doctors were calling every day to say, let's see, are you getting worse? At what point do I need to, as a doctor, have to bring you into the hospital? Are you right? I'm checking your pulse ox. Are you getting good oxygen? And that's not something you can tell in a home. Go ahead.
So is the goal, and of course, I don't know what you're able to discuss. So if it's something like that, you could say pass, girl. Is the goal for the person to go to the hospital or not? I feel like the goal is not to go to the hospital. Is it?
So I wouldn't say that, because what we don't want to do, and I'm pretty sure this has, I don't have scientific proof of. I can only speak of my experience as a nurse and what I think most people think. And this is, so once you get, if you're positive for COVID and your symptoms are mild, I honestly believe that some people might stay home too long. That by the time they do reach the hospital, they are so sick that all you can do is straight intubate them. That's a problem.
What does intubate do for them? When you intubate them, what is that process? What is that doing?
That process is a machine that's breathing for you because your lungs are just that bad. Because you got to remember,
this is the same thing.
This is a respiratory disease. Yes. Let's think of it all hand in hand. Same thing.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Intubation is the technique. Gotcha. Ventilation is the machine you're put on. And that's what that's the point. That's the part. Because I'm pretty sure there were some people who did not get tested for COVID, but they were at home and they got something that seemed just like a simple cold. They got a cough. They had a low-grade fever. So what did they do? They asked their wife, their family members, go get me some NyQuil. Go get me this to try to beat those symptoms. Then they got progressively worse. They stayed home. Probably when they come to the hospital, you're right. They might have had this for over 2 weeks. They've been fighting this for 10 days. However, maybe are we always going to try early prevention? Once you get sick, what about early preventive measure there? That's where the antibodies come in. The antibodies.
Tracey, you live in DC?
No, I live here in Maryland. Because
you live here in
Maryland. Because the drug that I'm giving is not even accessible here in Maryland yet. It's only in DC.
How do you have the drug?
Say that again.
How do you have it?
So every hospital, just like the vaccine that's coming out, only certain hospitals are equipped to be able to keep it cold. So that's why every hospital can't get it. Same thing with the vaccine. Not every hospital is equipped to be able to be in a study because they may not have the space. They may not have the pharmacy space to mix the drug. It's a lot that goes into it. But you asked the question about should a person do this or not do this? And I'm going to be an advocate and say they absolutely should do this. Because not only are you helping, I tell my patients, you're my hero right now. My patients are my hero. Because if this works, because we're all on a hope and a prayer that this works, because then again, the virus is overloading our ICUs. We don't have enough room for really sick people. So if I can get antibodies to you and prevent you from going to the hospital and not getting any worse, that it will maintain as it is. But if you don't take it, right, but if you don't take it, then I don't know how your outcome is going to be in the next 14 days. I don't know, you might get sicker. But it's globally.
Are you able to give? I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yes, because what they're doing is very globally. Are you able to? Go ahead.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Trying to balance. Are you able to give a medical suggestion? Like from my experiences and my friends, some people didn't make it to the ambulance as far as the EMTs checked them out at the house, but their goal wasn't to take them to the hospital. You know, something really strong must have happened in my experiences for them to go. So I got friends that never went to the hospital via an ambulance. And then they ended up having to go later because the ambulance says you're stabilized here, like try to do everything you can at home. Do you have a medical suggestion of when you feel this, you should be adamant about going to the hospital. These type of symptoms or these types of situations means you need to be in the hospital.
I think for me is the one thing when you become to the point of unable to do your normal activities. So if you have COVID, like Terry said, during the daytime, he was able to go out and do a 20-minute walk. When you no longer can walk from your bedroom to your bathroom, you can't walk 10 feet without getting with shortness of breath. It's time to go. It's time to leave your home. When just small everyday activities you can do, and then the next day you now no longer can do, then you probably should go to the hospital. And the reason why when the EMTs come out, they're checking a patient's pulse ox. So they're checking a patient's oxygen level. So if a patient O2 sats are satting at a normal level, they're like, okay, you're fine. You don't need to go to the hospital right now. But when those O2 sats start to drop, that's when we're like, okay, you have got to go. Because now you're not oxygenating. You're not getting enough oxygen to your brain. You're going to get confused
so we should have did this at first.
Mm-hmm.
But can you define what COVID is?
COVID is a virus, as any other virus that attacked our bodies. And that virus and it's respiratory, and it does attack your lungs. And then that's why we're worried about that. We're now in this flu and cold season, because now we have a flu season that is also a virus that attacks your respiratory. We have people who get pneumonia. So you can only imagine to get COVID on top of getting the flu, your lungs are just really up against a fight. To have both,
so
or even have pneumonia.
Lungs, it affects your breathing.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So when you don't get enough air to your oxygen to your brain, what potentially can happen?
Oh, you get totally confused. You become very confused. So you're right. The one thing you're looking at your family members is a change of mental status. You're looking, even no matter how old they are, if they're not answering, they seem inappropriate. They're not answering the appropriate answer to a question, then you should consider that, hey, something is wrong. You have to go to the hospital. Yes, that's shortness of breath.
Oh,
yes.
Great stuff.
Yes, that's shortness of breath.
So you can continue talking about that's a trial that you're in?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Go ahead.
And I tell my patients, and I tell my patients that this is something that is, what they're doing is going to affect the world. This is globally. This not just happening here in the United States, it's happening everywhere. So when you take the antibodies, and if you're getting better, guess what? That's giving all of us hope that if we contract, now we realize that this would be your path. If you get sick, you have a cold, get tested for COVID. Find out if you really have it. If your symptom is less than 10 days, then you can probably get the antibodies. Then that will stop you from getting sick or needing to go to the hospital. That's the hope that this works in that fashion. Because remember, even with a vaccine, it's only 95% effective. That still leaves a 5% of a population of people that still that vaccine is not going to work on. So if they become positive, then what happens? Because remember, we do not have a cure for COVID. There's no cure.
So the vaccine prevents you from getting it 95%, but it's not the cure. Are we looking for a cure? Or we focused on the vaccine first?
We focus on the vaccine first, because that's all about prevention. Just like if we don't want you to get the chicken pox or the measles, we give you a vaccine for it to stop it before you even get it.
So did COVID eat the flu? I know no one with the flu. Do you know someone with the flu?
I do not. I wouldn't say COVID eat the flu.
I made that up.
I wouldn't say, nor would I say COVID supersedes the flu. Mm-hmm. But the two hand in hand is what you don't want. That's what I can tell you. You don't want the flu and COVID.
And that's possible.
And
That
it
is
is
possible?
possible. It is
Okay,
possible.
Oh, wow.
As well
gotcha.
as to have pneumonia in COVID.
Yeah.
You can have pneumonia and also be COVID positive.
Now that one I heard of
Yeah,
because
that's
that's a
not a
part
good
of
thing.
that. It's the same
Right,
breathing. Okay,
right.
so like if I put up a post and I said, "Are you guys taking the vaccine when it's released?" Half of
Hmm.
them people are going to use curse words. No.
Right. Oh,
The
yeah,
other half
sure.
is maybe the first, the second, or the third round
Hmm.
of the. How do you? I know what you're doing is very important as the
Hmm.
answer of that question, but how do
Hmm.
you convince? Like by nature, we don't want a vaccine. I mean, it's a
Right,
lot of people that don't want a vaccine. How do
right.
you talk to them? How do you convince them? How can
I
you
don't,
change my mind? Like I don't want that. What's your
that
take?
is not for me to change your mind. Listen, life is
Okay.
always choice. Life is choice driven. Even with this study, it's choice driven. You don't have to have it. However, it's best that you do, but you don't have to. I'm not going to convince you. I can only give you the facts. However, but my facts cannot tell you that if you take this vaccine, it won't make you sick. I can't say that. I
Are
can't
you taking
say
it?
even. Oh yeah, I'm
Can I ask
definitely
that?
taking. Yes. Oh yeah, I'm taking it.
So
Absolutely.
how long have you been in your research, your trial? How long have you been taking it?
We started about 3 weeks ago. It's that new.
And how are you feeling? Or do you feel anything different? Or can you share that with us?
Oh yeah, I don't feel anything differently. No, I don't have any symptoms. You right. So when my patients come in, I'm in full PPE equipment. So yes, I have a N95 on. I have goggles. I wear a shield sometimes. You're right. I have a gown on. I have gloves on. I'm fully equipped.
And how often do you have to have it's a shot or something you're taking by mouth? How often do you have to do that?
Well, as far as a vaccine, you
Yes, the
mean?
testing stage.
Um, I don't understand your question because now for the vaccine itself, now I don't have that yet. I'm still
Okay.
waiting. Yeah, I'm still
Okay.
waiting for my
So
vaccine.
you're having the antibodies or what is the testing phase or the research phase? What are you doing
So
medically?
we're in the phase where so my patients come in for an hour infusion. It takes about an hour. And then after that, I monitor you for about an hour. And then after that, they can go home. Unfortunately, my stage is that I administer the drug. However, I don't have the follow up with patients. So I
Gotcha.
really don't know how they feel. And I explain that to some of my patients. So they have called me back. So I've had a patient who, after they got the infusion, called me about 2 days later. And he's like, you know what? I feel totally fine. I feel much better. I definitely feel better having gotten the antibodies. However,
So isn't that infusion? Is that like dialysis? What's
IV.
infusion?
Yup, they get
Okay.
an IV
Well, they
put in
like
their
putting
arm.
blood in. Okay.
No blood, yup. I just put an IV in, give the medicine, and that's it for about an hour.
Oh, that
Yeah,
very helpful.
yeah.
Very helpful.
So, but I
Is
had a
there?
cou-
Go ahead.
I've had a patient who said, called me about after a week of getting the antibodies, and they didn't feel any better, but they also didn't feel any worse. They still were pretty much the same. Nothing really changed for them.
Is there
So
a
Tracy, how you
placebo
guys?
part? Oh, go ahead, Crystal. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, Tracy. How are you guys recruiting for your patients? Like, are you all reaching out to the local hospitals? Are you all like, how are you getting your patients to do the
Um,
antibody
so outpatient, there
infusion?
is a scoring criteria for patients. When we initially started this study, we were only looking at patients with mild to no symptoms, but also they were over the age of 65 with a lot of those preconditioned symptoms of diseases, those preconditioned diseases such as heart disease, diabetes. So, however, since then, they have broadened the perspective of patients. So we now do a less than 65. However, symptoms cannot be over 10 days. After 10 days, they wouldn't qualify. But if their symptoms are less than 10 days, they still qualify. Because this is at one particular hospital, you're right. They just recruit just within that practice. So if someone come through that ER, that primary care doctor, that urgent care center, and they come up positive, they're then offered. They're like, you know what? When was your first symptoms? So if someone was tested positive on the 4th, but they're like, my symptoms started on the 2nd, though. We're going to count 10 days. It's like, well, we got you in this 10-day window. Do you want to get to antibodies?
What phase of the research are they in? Like, what are they finding so far?
As far as any adverse reactions to it. So far, no one's had any type of reaction to it with me. But there are reactions to every drug. So there's always the one where you can have an anaphylactic shock reaction, where, you know, your throat swells, your tongue swells. However, that hasn't really been seen much at all. There are all those mild symptoms because we are giving you a virus. So therefore, you may spike a fever. You can have some nausea with it. But so far, none of my patients complained of anything. I usually tell them the same way you came in feeling, you'll probably leave the same way feeling the same way, with no real changes.
Is there something is it something that you wanted to add that neither of us asked the question about?
I think the one thing
I have another question. I changed.
Yeah. The one thing I would want to add is that, especially for our community, how important for us to participate. I think Tony kind of touched on it when you mentioned that some people may not want to get vaccinated. Some people may want to. Some people may want to do the antibody study. Some don't. And some of the reason why you're right, because of some of these misconceptions out there, especially within the Black community, when it goes around research studies, because we all know the stories. We know the story of the Tuskegee Airmen. We know the story of Henrietta Lacks. So we are very fearful. Even those of us that live in Baltimore City, let's just be honest, we've had the urban legend of John Hopkins taking people off the street and doing research studies with them. But we've come a long way since then. And it's very important that we do participate, because if we look at the story of Henrietta Lacks, that lady's cells, even to this day, have designed most of the drugs that are out here in this world. And that was from a Black woman. Whether they did it appropriately or not, it was worldwide beneficial, even to this day. So that's the one thing I really want us to, as our community, is to realize how important and how impactful our genes are and things that's happening. Because even with this, I tell one of my patients, she really didn't want to get the antibodies. She didn't want to do it. And I told her she had every right. I couldn't tell her. All I can do is give her the facts that what you're about to get doesn't make you too sick. These are the symptoms some people have. If you're willing to work that risk, I think it's worth it. Are you going to ask me, would I get the antibodies if I became COVID positive? Yes, I am. Because not so much as that I'm going to help myself, but I'm going to help the community at large if it works. I'm going to help a lot of people. My patients, I tell them they're going to help a lot of people, the world. Because now we know if this works, if you get COVID, get tested quickly, I can get you this medicine and you don't get any sicker. And we don't have an ICU that's 90% to capacity. Because not every nurse is an ICU nurse. Not every doctor is an ICU doctor. That's a special breed of people that do that. So therefore, we're not great in numbers. Healthcare is not great in numbers. There's not enough nurses and not enough doctors to take care of every human being out here. We're limited. Okay, but what we don't want to get into is selective care. That's what we don't want to get into, selective care. I think for me as a nurse, that's the most emotional thing, because I took an oath that I will do no harm. So I listened to Terry's story, and Terry's story is very broad, because I've had coworkers and who've contracted COVID, and you all have no idea the guilt that they have, the guilt that comes with that, the shame that comes with that when you as a healthcare professional get it. Because now you thinking, did I give it to my patients? Now did I give it to them? Now my family. It is a weight. It is a weight for everybody.
I never even thought of that. Yeah.
It's a weight.
We had someone else join the party for about 15 minutes, and she's been sitting and patiently waiting.
Yes, she has.
Hello, lady. How are you?
Hi, everybody.
Introduce yourself, please.
I am Cherees. I also happen to be Nina, the original party girl's sister. And I did my honey contracted COVID probably from his job. He worked in a factory environment. Um, and for him, he did not have a super bad time of it. He had the first day he wears one of those step counters, and he said, I think he said he had walked 3,000 steps that day at work. He said he could feel each and every step, so his legs were hurting. The next day, his arms were sore as if he had worked out. And then after that, he had a little cough, a little tickle in his throat, but really a relatively easy time. And I was really afraid because he is a double transplant recipient. So, I had been on him about being precautious and putting things into place before it became a mandate on his job. And he still managed to get the virus. And then also, as you know, my dad is, battling the virus. He's probably, if I had to guess, he probably would be in the stage where he no longer has it, but he's dealing with the effects of having been through COVID-19. That fact.
So
it is a very scary thing it's a very, very scary thing to watch loved ones battling it, especially when you know they already have some other things going, and seeing them just not be their normal selves, not just being sick, but you see how much it has stripped from them. It's a very scary thing to watch.
So I would like to switch.
I'll say one more thing before I go.
Go ahead.
I think that I will probably get the vaccine faster than my peers, only because I was a part of a study in my life before. I was a part of a study for migraines. I used to suffer from migraines, pretty terrible migraines. And now they didn't used to have migraine medicine, and now they do. So, and I did not have any adverse reactions or anything. So I think that I probably will be one of the ones who will take the vaccine. I don't know if I will rush to it right away, simply because it's new and I don't feel like we have enough information yet. But I am a person, once I get information, I digest it pretty quickly.
So I wanted to wrap up what Tracey said as far as like the top 3 things to notice. Cheree's angle is companion. She had to take care of somebody literally without getting close to them. So we're going to go back to that. But as far as Tracey on the front line, when you notice that a person is not in their right mind, that may mean they're not getting enough oxygen. They should be in the hospital. When you can't do your regular stuff, when it takes you 20 minutes, which Daddy did, to get from the bedroom to the bathroom, that's a problem. And there was a third one. What's another top 3? You need some medical attention, Tracey.
I think one of them is where you do start to see your fever. If you do start to see that fever start to increase, especially above 101.4, I would definitely say you need to seek medical attention, especially when that fever starts to really spike.
Yeah,
Okay.
one of the
Great.
I wanted to touch on that too. One of the before I forget.
Okay.
Tracey
We're
said
all you,
something-
Crystal.
Yeah. Tracey said something really important. Actually, everybody did that I could point out. Like I said, I work in the hospital, so I see these patients every day. I work with the families who cannot be with these patients. I'm kind of like that link, that person that's connected them to the doctors and the patient because they can't be there. And I feel bad for those family members. You know, like Cherees said, she was able to be there. She watched her loved one, but you have family members who cannot be there. And it's unfortunate because you have these people battling by themselves. So as healthcare practitioners like myself, as a social worker and the nurses and the doctors, we're the ones at bedside with these patients. So it's actually, I mean, literally, mentally, I don't even know how I'm handling, sustaining. I think prayer because to watch someone, literally 2-3 people die daily, that's a lot. And to pass that news to their families, and you literally have people that don't know how to make funeral arrangements, so you're like trying to help with that. You have people that don't have health insurance. You have people that just don't have the resources to access. So
people that don't have people.
Exactly.
Right.
That's a piece. I noticed that. That's a piece. That loneliness can get caught up in that COVID, and it makes it worse because the person that's sick doesn't have the resources or a person, or they feel extremely lonely. You're isolated.
Depression,
anxiety, which doesn't help with the breathing. A lot of times you have patients that's already having a hard time breathing, and then they have anxiety, which causes them to breathe.
We
all doing that.
Which causes a lot of people to have to be intubated and placed on a ventilator because they can't breathe. And they're supposed to be worried about getting better, but then they worried about, I can't pay the hospital bill. Who's going to take I'm
going to lose my job. I get paid by the hour.
Yes, definitely. But what Tracey said was important. Do not wait until the last minute to come to the hospital, because what happens is one of the drugs that I noticed that they're treating the COVID with is remdesivir. Remdesivir is one of the antibiotics that they're using to treat COVID. However, if your symptoms are too far gone, the remdesivir doesn't help. So if you have a fever, come to the ER, period, because your symptoms might not be a lot, but it's enough where you could get treated and go home. One of the things I'm noticing since March, nobody really knew what was going on. Doctors were trying to figure out how can we treat, what can we do. But as time progressed, you started seeing the remdesivir. You started seeing people getting plasma and blood and things like that. So you started seeing more people go home versus back in March, April, May, a lot of people weren't. And like you said, they were waiting too late to come to the hospital. That's why you were seeing a lot of deaths, because they were waiting to be treated.
A lot of it starts with that front line, with your EMTs and your ambulance. Can you help me with the language that should be used when I'm trying to convince you that I need to go to the hospital?
Right.
Help me. How do I say that? Or how does someone advocate? Because they took my dad to Sinai, they released him like 6 hours later. We ended up having to call another ambulance, and the ambulance took him to another hospital altogether. But I know when the second time he went, in the conversation with the EMT, I'm like, it is important to know that he has pre-existing conditions, and these are what they are, and they don't go with COVID. So he's got a whole nother issue over here, but now you put COVID on top of it. I feel like because I had that type of conversation, it was more informative for them to make the decision, even on what hospital they took him to, so that he could get another level of care.
You definitely have to let the frontline workers know if you have any type of pre-existing conditions, like if you have heart problems, if you have COPD, if you are a smoker, if you if you drink. I'm saying a lot of people that drink are having issues with COVID. A lot of people that smoke are having issues with COVID. Diabetes, high blood pressure. Those are the ones that are having really bad issues. And then not just that, you have people that come in with no history at all, but they leave with COVID and then they develop asthma. You get people, it causes asthma, it causes, blood clots in your lungs. I'm even noticing with Black men, dialysis, kidney problems. They're developing kidney problems. So, COVID has this, is causing a lot of illnesses after the fact.
So we are now in the process where they have been switched from the hospital to a therapy rehabilitation type situation.
Mm-hmm.
We keep telling him, the minute you see a social worker, call us, because we have questions. No one's really discussing the coordination of care, and they're not. I don't know if he's not understanding what they're telling him, but he needs someone else in that conversation to actually hear. How do you get the social worker to show up?
So
because that's the one, right?
Is he at a nursing a rehab center? So
Yes.
You call up there and ask to speak to who's the social worker on his case. Each patient in a nursing facility has a social worker assigned to them. You need to call up there to see who's involved with his case. If you can't get the social worker, ask for the nurse manager. Who's the nurse manager on the unit? Each unit have a nursing manager on the unit. The floor nurse may be too busy. So you call directly and speak to a nursing supervisor, a nurse manager, and talk to them, because you definitely want to be involved in the plan of care.
A plan of care. Thank you for those words. I know that, like Terry mentioned, your insurance can play a major part on your treatment. I know that a facility with a certain insurance, you might get 100 days and you don't have to pay a copay. Does that adjust the level of care because they know that you have that amount of time, or they still trying to treat you and get you out of the facility?
So what people don't know is, with the CARES Act, the government created the CARES Act, and that's, that came with COVID, and that's kind of like, the CARES Act falls under many different things, but from a hospital standpoint, I get a lot of patients with no insurance at all. But if you have a social security number, you could get equipment and certain services under the CARES Act. A lot of people don't know that, but it takes the case manager or the social worker there at the hospital to offer it.
Okay.
So they do have different resources for particular COVID patients.
Can you give me an example of something that was really hard for you during this pandemic in your job role? I know that you see people pass away a lot. I don't know how it gets any harder than that, but anything else?
I would say I could give a story. I had a patient who was from New York. She was 35. She came down here to visit somebody and she came from New York. So, that was around the time when New York was dealing with their issues with the COVID. So she literally traveled to New York to here to Maryland with COVID. She got sick, and her friend found her passed out at the hotel. Again, it's like Tracey said, by the time we got her, she had to be placed on a ventilator. You have a young mom who has small kids back in New York. She just came down for the weekend. So what was hard was communicating to her 20-year-old son, because he was the person over her case. So you have this kid that's 20 years old having to make life and death decisions for his mom. That was hard for me, because I have a son around that age. And when I saw her, I was like, oh God, this could be me. So it was one of those things where I had to kind of step out of my own thinking and had to think like a healthcare professional. His whole thing was, I need my mom back in New York. So I'm like, oh God, how can I get this COVID patient that's on a ventilator to New York? Like, she's too sick. So trying to explain to him what's going on with his mom. He's young. He don't understand. She's getting sicker and sicker and sicker. And he's taking care of his 9-year-old brother and his 16-year-old brother, and they're there in New York by themselves, and their mom is on a ventilator here, So it was just hard for me to maneuver that. And the sad part about it is, encouraging him to come to visit his mom because she was so sick. Even though COVID patients cannot have visitors, they allowed him because she was dying. So everybody was having a hard time, even the physicians telling this young boy his mom was dying. That was hard for everybody. So he ended up making it just in time. And she passed as soon as he got there. It's like she was kind of like holding on to
waiting for him. She was waiting.
That was hard.
That's hard.
So I think that you have the other piece of the conversation as far as like we live like our lives, like we live our lives. And because of the pandemic, it should change the way you live because you never know. So you have people with no insurance. What else can you do? And this is not even if you're sick, but like I noticed with one of our cases, one of our personal friends, they had nothing set up. Even the way you get into the house was complicated. Nobody had an extra key. We got to kick doors down. Like, what are examples of things that people should have in place now, just in case?
I definitely say if you're not seeing a doctor on the regular, go see a doctor. I would definitely say if you don't have advanced directives in place, get your advanced directives done. Now, advanced directive in the living will is done when you're able to make decisions. So if you have an 80-year-old grandmother who's losing her memory and she's confused, you might want to apply for guardianship of grandma because she can't make that decision to appoint somebody to do something for her. But if you have a loved one that's elderly and they're able to make decisions, encourage them to do an advanced directive of living will. Now, some older people are very stuck in their ways where they don't want to do those things, but try to have that conversation with them and tell them how important it is now with COVID that's going on.
So if you don't have a living will, is it a way that you can piece it? Like, can I be your POA for the nursing home or just the hospital? Or just
the state of Maryland have the surrogacy law, but it goes in order. So like if, you have a loved one, but they married, then of course that spouse is the surrogate. But if you have multiple children, so say for instance, if your mom doesn't have a power of attorney, but it's 5 of you guys, you all have equal rights and you all have to agree. It could get confusing. So that's why we encourage people to have an advanced directive to appoint somebody to make decisions for them and talk about what they want, what their wishes are when they're unable to make decisions.
And have you had that conversation?
That eliminates all of the extra.
All the drama, all the
you just simply put it in writing.
All of the unnecessary treatment.
Because y'all know how, and I'm gonna just put it out there, y'all know how us Black families can get.
Yeah.
When it's time to make those decisions. It's so important to just have that stuff in writing so that there's no outside influences. It makes it cut and dry when you have that directive in place. That's very important. I'm glad you touched on that.
Yeah.
And you have the uncomfortable conversations now while we're healthy. So my sister knows what my wishes are, which would be different from my husband. My husband probably will want me to live forever, but my sister knows give it this amount of time, because people are different. They're emotionally vested in it in different ways.
Yeah.
So a mother loves her child different from the man loves his wife, different from the sister loves the sister. So I encourage everyone, regardless of what your health is, to have these healthy conversations with the ones that you love, because in the midst of it all, some people make situations about themselves. It's not about you. It is what the person that you are taking care of or the patient has requested and what works well for them. It is not about you. Now, with some of my father's stuff, this was before COVID. I'm on like his cars. I'm on his house. So in the event that something major would happen, I'm already on these pieces of property. It can slide over to me. The process would be easier in the midst of it all. When you lose someone or someone's sick, you don't have time to deal with the petty stuff. So that should be
that, and not just that, That's not when a person is grieving. Like, for example, we have patients that's COVID. When you have patients, when family members have to make those decisions, should I put my loved one on a ventilator? That is a hard decision to make when you're grieving or when you're in distress. Like that's why I tell people, make those decisions when you're healthy, because for a family to put your family in that position is just hard. Because the job at the hospital, the goal is to treat. They treat. So they're going to do whatever they can to try to treat you. But is it a quality of life for that person?
Right.
So what didn't I ask you? You know stuff, Crystal. Cherees, do you have Crystal's a social worker and healthcare professional. Do you have questions for her?
Well, she already answered one question, because I plan on calling the rehab facility tomorrow, because they have not given my dad any rehab. He got there late on Thursday night, and the goal is to get him strong enough to go home. So, okay, you got there late Thursday night. Okay, no rehab, of course not. Okay, Friday, you may have to come up with a plan of care, but today is Monday. So, I wanted to know who I need to speak to find out why is it that he has not had any kind of rehab yet at this point. So she answered that by saying to make the call and speak to the nurse. What's the nurse's name?
The nursing supervisor. Not just that too. What you also want to ask is, each facility have their own rules on how they treat COVID patients. If your dad is COVID positive, they may have a policy on how a COVID positive patient is rendered therapy. And not just that. Also, I don't know your dad's case in particular, but is he on oxygen? How is his breathing? Is he strong enough to get breathing?
Right, exactly. That's my whole 2%. Line of questioning.
2%. Right. So their initial thing was, we're gonna take them to the facility so we can wean them off the oxygen, then we can release them. That's why they didn't release them at home, because that's another part. When you have someone that has COVID and you're the only one that they have, or it's a whole family, only one person is designated to go in that space. So for fear of contracting COVID themselves. So we were hanging bags of food on the door, sliding stuff under the door, but he wasn't able to maintain that. Like, once I actually got in the house, you could tell he ate a spoonful of everything that we bought. So much food that he didn't eat in that house. He had the right medicines, but because he's confused, he couldn't take the medicine. So his was because he couldn't successfully take care of himself to a satisfactory level. He did really, really well. He really does. But it was to the point where we were like, okay, let him go to the hospital, because you get that round the clock care that we couldn't provide. So that's another conversation among family, like, who is going into that space to care for that person? Do you see those type of situations?
All the time. And not just that, I see where the entire family is in the hospital because someone has gone in the room to care. Because as a family member, we're going to care for you. We're not going to just see you go out.
Right.
So we get the entire family. We get husband and wife. Now they have to go to a facility. And if they're on a high amount of oxygen, because nursing facilities, they like rehab centers, they're only allowed to maintain a patient at a certain amount of oxygen. If it go beyond, a nasal cannula, which is the tubing that we normally see, we have to refer the patients to LTACs, which are long-term acute care hospitals. So, like, sometimes we have patients that is on a high-flow nasal cannula. A lot of nursing homes can't take care of that. Then we have to refer those patients to LTACs. So,
see that he's physically.
I do a lot of that.
We see him physically improving, but the environment of the facility is a problem. Like, he's not as in high speed. When he was in the hospital, he's nosy. Nurses coming in and out. He could see people. He was in a part of the action. He gets over to the therapy. It's boring. He doesn't know what's going on with his care or his health. So we felt that it knocked his spirit down. And then now you got all these people trying to help you. well, we're sending this, Daddy, and we're such and such is sending that. He got sadder, for lack of a better word, because all these people, I don't want to be a burden to all of these people. People need to know in your friendships and in your relationships that it's kind of like marriage. It's kind of like to death do us part, for better, for worse. Accept the help. Don't be ashamed when you have onset COVID symptoms. You need to reach out to people. What are they your friends for in the first place?
And those are conversations you continue to have with your dad. Like I tell family members all the time, you know, the patients, they're going to be confined to their room because they have COVID. They can't be out lingering throughout the hospital.
That doesn't work with him. He's a lingerer.
Right. So this is where the FaceTimes come in, where the constant calls from the families come in. I tell families all the time, call nonstop, keep their mind going, because
so it's okay to have a lot of calls. We didn't know if he needed to rest or not.
I mean, you have to keep his mind going, because if an idle mind is a dangerous mind. So if you're not constantly feeding him positive, you know, things, I don't know if he's a Christian or if you read the Bible, like constantly pray with him, because if he is just sitting there looking at the wall with no activity, depression will set in. He will.
Yeah, that's not good.
Yeah,
he's a mover. He's a shaker. He would have a whole band in that hospital if they let him. That's a part of that, you know, of being sick. You got to keep still. That's hurtful.
Does that facility offer FaceTime video visits? Does the facilities in?
Oh, so I don't know. That's a good question. We've done it on our phone.
Write that down, please.
What?
Write that down.
Write down what? Does the facility offer FaceTime?
Right.
Mm-hmm. All right. And well, I'm jumping back to Cherees for just 1 second. When you said that you're going to call the facility tomorrow and see who you have to talk to, about 2 minutes before I got on the show, Daddy told me that I'm the only one that the facility will talk to. Right. Yeah. So you can call me, your big sister, tomorrow. I'll give you an update, but make sure hey, I just want to make sure I told you that, because they're only going to talk to one person. So they don't told the rest of the family, no, they're not talking to them. I didn't know.
One person. One person, because it gets really confusing when you have the entire family calling. So we always ask if you have one person in the family to call and let that person speak to the rest of the family. So what I would suggest is you guys, I don't know how big your family is, but I tell my families, one person call, you guys schedule a FaceTime Zoom meeting with the entire family, and then give the family updates from when you talk to someone to keep the family updated.
We kind of have that in the text part now.
We've been doing really good with that.
Every time we talk to him, one of us texts the whole group and let them know what. But see, that's why I was waiting for Crystal, because I had real live questions for you. You want to approach? I'm very serious about my father's health. I do not want to offend a healthcare professional in me trying to get information, but I hope that they are compassionate to understand enough that we need, like, why wouldn't they have called me? Is that protocol?
Well, it is. Any change in condition, it is. You're supposed to call if they're changing meds and things like that. You're supposed to be getting calls from the doctors. I, encourage the doctors at my facility to call. If a family call me and say, I haven't talked to the doctor today, I shoot a text to the doctor, please call this family to update them, because it just gives you a sense of security of knowing what's going on. Being out of the loop is bad for the family, because you can't be there. Bad enough for communicating virtually or on the phone. So that line of communication is important. And I try to preach that at work, like that line of communication to the family and the patient is crucial. It's about, like, this is about them. So we can't leave them out of the process. So yes.
When my father was discharged from Hospital 1 on Northern Parkway, he came from the back of the hospital, between the ambulances, behind the dumpster. So I'm like, hey, Dad, did they really release you, or are you escaping from the hospital? No, he said, I made him show me his papers. So if he had discharge papers. But at one point, you couldn't even leave the hospital with nothing wrong in a wheelchair. So I'm like, I don't know if he's telling the truth or not. So
Was
that's
this when he
something
had
else.
COVID?
He had COVID.
Yeah.
He had COVID. This was recently. So 3 days later, we ended up with another hospital, calling them again, because he had everything that Tracey was talking about. He wasn't connecting the thoughts. His breathing had not improved, and his mobility, like he sit 15 minutes on the bed, stand up, sit down again, then go to the bathroom, and you're in there for 15 more minutes, and you're talking about taking a shower. So if you can't get up off the edge of the bed, I don't know what's going to happen in that shower. So that just got vetoed. Like, no, we're not doing that. So that leads me back to Crystal.
When your dad got discharged from the ER with COVID. So let me ask you a question. This probably helps somebody that's tuning in. When you go to the ER, and if it's an elderly patient, what were the instructions on the discharge summary? What did they tell you to do?
Drink plenty of fluids. He wasn't given any medication. Monitor your breathing. Sleep on your stomach. I don't know if I can remember the rest.
That's called a prone position. So what proning does, it helps, with the breathing on your lungs. So we always encourage any COVID patients to sleep on their stomach. It's called a prone position.
Good stuff. More good stuff. I'm so glad to be
follow with his primary care physician?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Crystal, you and I were right there.
Yeah. Did they ask him to follow up with his primary care physician?
Ask him about his primary care physician?
On the discharge summary, did it say to follow up with the primary care physician?
Oh, okay. See, we haven't gotten to that yet because he went back to the hospital. We knew something wasn't right. It's like they released you. You don't have anything, and you're not getting any better. And he has a pre-existing.
So let me tell you about the hospital. Very limited bed, very limited space. Yeah. So when you get a patient in an ED, they don't like to have borders.
ED, erectile dysfunction.
What is that? When you get in the emergency department.
Okay.
If you're not if you got a COVID patient that come in and you're having no symptoms like that, you will discharge you home and hope that you follow up with the primary care doctor, and that primary care doctor monitor the symptoms. Because they need to keep them beds free for the patients that need to be on a ventilator or intubated. So yes, sometimes when you do have a COVID patient that go to the ED, and if there's symptoms, they have a checklist that they go by in the emergency department. And if you don't fall within that certain bracket, then yes, you do get discharged. So it's one of those things where I tell COVID patients, follow those instructions to a T on that discharge summary from the emergency department. Because sometimes people don't.
He was unable to do it by himself. Yeah. He really was. Just even to the fluid part. Like taking a sip of water was a job, So I knew he wasn't going to get 2 or 3 bottles in because he couldn't get past the sip. So it was like really, it came to the point.
Just like what Chiquita was saying, that's the important part. So when you go to the ED or even any urgent care center, I always tell people, and I'm an old ER nurse. I used to work in the ER. So that's the one thing I always tell patients. When you come to the ED, no matter what they said to you, you have got to follow up with your primary, because understand the job of an emergency room physician. His only job is to determine is that what you're coming in for, is it killing you now or can it wait? That's how he makes his decision. And if it's
you're gonna die today or on Friday.
Right. And if it's not killing you, because remember, an ER doctor don't specialize in anything. He don't know about dermatology. Remember, if you come into the ER and you got a broken bone, what is your ER doctor going to do? He's going to call an orthopedic doctor to come see you. Even though the one hospital one let him go, soon as he came home, call his primary. Because remember, his primary care doctor do have, even though he may not go to a clinic or he may not be in a hospital, he does have privileges at a hospital. So when you would have called the primary would have been on it. He would have been like, I want you to call me this time. I want you to let me know when he spiked a fever. I want to know when the changes occur. Because he can intervene and call hospital B and say, I got privileges there. So I need you to get your dad to the hospital where I have privileges. Because then now I can admit your father to the hospital. I don't need the ER doctor to do that for me. Matter of fact, I'll call the ER doctor and let them know that you're on your way.
Yeah.
Does the facility, the therapy, does the therapy place know that his primary care? He's in a rehab now. Do they know who his primary care physician is? Are they having a conversation?
They're not having a conversation.
Okay, so tell me how that works.
Once he goes home, once they'll coordinate with their primary, because not only will your father, if he's still doing rehab and if he didn't get enough rehab in the facility just because of the restrictions of him going about through COVID, you got to remember, he now qualifies possibly for home health care. He can get rehab in the home. He can get nursing in the home. Exactly. And that's what yes.
We want that. But that all goes along with this treatment plan in the therapy. If they can get that oxygen right, then he can go home. On that note, what are things that people should prepare for when they're receiving someone that is recovering from COVID? How do you take care of them?
I think, I mean, you're going to take care of them as well. You're going to meet their needs. So if your patient, if your family member is still not able to walk or they're limited, they still can't go to. So of course you're right. They're going to need some type of meal preparation there. Whether they get something delivered, where you find you might need Meals on Wheels, which it costs. That's not free.
And it's not delicious.
No, it's not. It's not very delicious. But so you're right. You're going to meet the needs of your family member or patient in the home or where they need. And you're right. And you are looking at the safety of their safety as well. So is your father coming to a house? In order for him to get to the bathroom, he got to go up and down stairs. All those things matter. Is there stairs in the home? Do we
just
need
to get in?
Right, just to get into the house. You're right. Are there stairs to get in? Do we now need an ambo to bring him home, or can we put him in a car because we don't have a ramp to get him in? Those are all.
So you use an ambulance if it steps to bring him.
Yeah, if he can't walk up the steps to get into the house, you're not going to be able to physically get him in.
When you call the facility tomorrow, make sure you ask to speak to whoever his rehab team is. And I can't really speak on the facility he's at. I only can speak on my experience because I have a lot of years of working in a nursing home as a social worker. But now I work on the hospital side. You definitely have to. Actually, I've been working as a social worker for 18 years. I don't even want to say that, but you definitely have to ask this the nursing home rehab team who his therapist is, because you want to communicate to them the steps and what they need to do in order to function at home, because those are the goals that they have to put in place for him.
Right.
But I don't know. Now, those are some of the things they're supposed to ask. I can't really speak to that facility, but if they're really skilled at what they do, I'm quite sure they asked your dad already how many steps is in your house. I'm quite sure they already asked that question already.
He don't know. If they asked him, he don't even know.
Okay, well then that means somebody in the family need to call up there and speak to the rehab team so they can know, because you don't want time to go by and they say he's not making progress. But then what goal did you put down for him? What did you put down for him?
So there are
Did I miss anything? Crystal, go ahead, Cherees.
I was just telling you why I have 5 steps from the door in the house and then 14 steps to the second floor.
Now let me ask y'all a question. Is he on oxygen?
2%.
I think they're saying 2%.
2 liters. Is it 2 liters? Might be 2 liters.
2 liters.
2 liters. Okay. Now, are
What?
they talking about he might have to come home with oxygen?
The goal is for him to not have the
He
oxygen
could.
when he comes home.
Is he walking
That's why
with
they
it?
sent him there. That's what they said.
Is he walking with it? He needs it to walk. I'm quite
We
sure as a
don't know
COVID
because
patient.
we can't see him.
Okay.
I'll
And
ask
he
him,
hasn't
but we
had
can't see
he
what he's
hasn't had
doing.
any therapy yet. He hasn't had anything.
Okay. Yeah,
Right, they haven't
sometimes with
started the
complications,
therapy.
you can't sit back and wait for them to call you because they get caught up or get busy. But definitely call, be proactive.
Right, we had the wrong people calling.
Yeah, just
Right.
call and say, I need to know what's the plan to keep my day.
Y'all would just put him in my wife's facility, then my wife would take care of all of this for y'all. And she's on my right hand side telling me, Nina, that we will contact you tomorrow because she can help you with everything that you need to know.
Yeah, I knew y'all wasn't there. I knew he wasn't there because I was about to say, I know he ain't there.
No, but it was a matter of
Right. I
who
just
had
feel like
available
this.
beds. It was a matter of who had available beds, and the first place he chose, the reviews were so bad. We like, you cannot go there. I'm sorry. Now the place he's in, their reviews weren't great, but they were better than the one that he initially chose.
Okay.
That's surprising because the state is starting to roll out a no choice law where if a case manager at a hospital finds a facility for your loved one to go to that's taking a COVID positive patient, you don't have
You
no
gotta
choice.
go.
That's where they're going.
Right.
So I mean,
I felt
I
that
can
like
maybe
that
have
was
a
a piece of that.
in the hospital world that allow him to choose. They're not allowed to choose no more. Not for COVID.
I felt like that was a piece of that. He had to go in this selection. These are your
Right.
choices. I do want to say, like now, today, I might have said I haven't talked to such and such in a minute. I am learning through this process. If I haven't talked to them, I really need to check on them. Doesn't matter how old they are or who they are. If you have Facebook and social media, you see people. When you don't see a person, you don't hear from a person, it's time to go look for that person. And that's not wishing anything bad on them. It's just a lot going on. And we need to stay connected, even though it's hard to stay connected. Go look for somebody. I looked for 2 people that had COVID. I'm like, I haven't heard from this person. What you doing? They answer the phone. Hello. So you hear it right away. You can't breathe. You can't talk. What's going on? I don't feel good. What do you mean you don't feel good? I can't breathe or this. I feel like you should go to the hospital. I have been told on more than one occasion, I don't want to go to the hospital. So then it becomes your responsibility, to convince your loved one to go to the hospital. Can anybody help me with that language when you're talking to a friend? How do you get them to go to the hospital? And do you just send the ambulance over there to kick the door?
Go to the hospital.
You know what? I kind of talk to people, I just think of people of just basic needs. I talk to people based on basic needs, meaning that in order to convince them, I'll say, are you able to feed yourself? Are you able to prepare a meal for yourself? And they're like, no, I can't do that. Then it's like, then are you able to bathe? Are you able to clean yourself? When you can't meet your own basic needs, don't you think now you need to go to the hospital? Like your basic needs aren't being met. You're not even getting enough nutrition in you. Are you eating? Are you drinking? Sometimes I meet people there, and once they start to kind of see like, life is starting to be real hard over here, then they tend to say, you're right, I do need to go get help.
You assess their needs.
Yeah. And I kind of show them, are you able to meet your own needs? Because just like you were saying about your dad, he was a person who definitely wanted to be independent. That was his thing. He needed to be independent. But once you start to show him that he no longer was independent, he's ready to go. And so now you want your independence back, right? You want to be, you don't want your daughter taking care of you. Then this is what you need to do in order for that to happen then. Yeah.
That's exactly
a
the
great suggestion that goes with that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
You what?
So look, this is what we're gonna do because we've already gone over the limit, Nina. Stop.
Okay.
I will
I'm
keep
sorry.
I will
Thank you. I'm in love with y'all now.
I will definitely have you and your sister in touch with not only these two young ladies but my wife, because all of them can give you all kind of valuable information to help with your dad. But as we were talking about this stuff throughout the night, the one thing that I kept saying is like, okay, Nina and Cherees, you guys are here for your father. You have people that are here for anybody that's dealing with the COVID situation. But who's here for Tracey and Crystal and all of these people that are dealing with, in some cases, tens and hundreds of patients a day for hours upon hours a day, sometimes in many cases, 7 days a week? How can we be here for you guys to just make you just feel a little bit, not even necessarily make you feel a little bit better, but to kind of like give you guys some stress relief to say, damn, I need a break. Can somebody just, because I feel like you guys, and you hear it on TV sometime, shout out to the, salute to the front line, but are we really saluting you guys the way that we really?
I think for me, when I see people are doing what they're supposed to do, to wear their mask, to stay away from being around a bunch of people, just following the rules, that makes me feel so much better, because that's like one less person out of the house. I get so crazy when I see people still going to outings, still having a bunch of people at their house. Oh my God, that as a healthcare worker, that just drives me crazy to see. If to make me feel good to know that people are doing what they got to do to stay safe, I'm just happy with that. I appreciate the shout out to the healthcare workers. I appreciate all of that. But to know people are doing what they got to do to stay safe, when I see that reckless behavior, that's when I go crazy and go.
Yeah, because it's gotten to a point where that little shout out feels so cliche. It's just like, oh, let's
I'm like, just wear a mask.
Right. Yeah. What about you?
Well, for me, it's always going to be not so much needing a recognition from other people as much as it is about me really learning how to provide self-care for myself. I think that's important for me. I think that I steal these moments away, because you're right, I work on a unit that has limited nurses. So you're right, I'm working quite a bit down in DC. And it was something I voluntarily took on. So I just do self-care, which is why you have so many cups. So I love
one down here.
So I'm totally in the arts and crafts. So I'm always doing some type of craft and some type of something to just distract me. That's from that,
And I think that, and not to cut you off, I think that's where I was going with my question. Like, what is it that you obviously do cups, but Crystal, what is it that you do after you've been dealing with this, day in and day out? You got this long commute that you take. Like, what is it that you do to kind of like have a woosah moment?
Man, on my commute, I listen
just like wake up and face this again the next day, because it's not going anywhere.
Listen, I listen to the most ratchetest music I can listen to on my way.
Yeah.
I be turning up in the car. You would think I'm in a club. Yep. I try to like wind down like that. Then of course I get on Facebook and cut up. Like I use that as an outlet. And I had somebody hit me like, you on Facebook cutting up, but that's my way to like release some of the. I'm so like it's so depressing. My job is so depressing. So I try to, even at work. Like, it's so funny, my nurses, when I'm not there, they miss me. Because I'm that person that comes to work and blasting Beyonce on the unit and having to dance, because it's so depressing. So, like, it's like you got to find some type of like joy, like, because if not, you be depressed all day. So I'm always, trying to make people laugh and, cut up and things like that. So, just listen to music and It's relaxing and like self-care. Really.
That's very important, man. That's the one thing. As I was kind of sitting here just listening to you guys talk about it, and of course having a wife that's in that same field. And I know, like, sometimes the first thing she does when she comes home is just go straight and get a glass of wine and just, start to kind of, mellow down and just, find different ways to just, and I can't imagine the stress that you guys face on a daily basis. So I just commend you guys for, just like Crystal, I know, like, I keep thinking about your commute and the fact that by the time you get home and then you got, you got family and you got stuff to go with, by the time you get in bed, probably time for you to wake back up because you got to take this long drive back down to deal with the same stuff over and over and over again. And I know, like me, even though I do IT in the mental health field, so I understand the importance of mental health and I see a lot. And like, I think you guys should like just be not only commended, but like there should be therapists available or something for you guys to just be able to have that relief. You know what I'm saying? Because you guys are going through so much on a daily. It's just
they of course, our hospital offer the EA, the employee assistance program for the counseling and things like that. They do offer weekly different things for the employees from a mental health standpoint to make sure mentally we're doing okay. They have offered like some people to do alternative schedules if it's too much. So yeah, I mean, I think, from a healthcare standpoint, my place of employment is, there for us as far as mentally us getting what we need. Yeah, I think it's just part of the job. I think our job is to take care of people, and that's what we focus on. I don't think it's until we probably lay down at night and we think about our day, like, oh my God, like this is what we went, because we're so busy trying to help people, and it's not until we lay down when we realize, like, oh God, this is what I went through today. Well, for me, I don't think about it until I'm probably about to go to sleep. Like, oh my gosh. I try not to carry it home. Some patients I do, some situations, because I be feeling so bad for the families. And it's just like, wow, So, yeah.
Well, I commend y'all. I don't know if I could do the job that you guys do. I don't know if I could deal with that kind of stress during this time on a daily basis. So I definitely commend you guys. And Cherees, I commend you and Nina for just everything that you're doing, being there, for your father. I know y'all gonna take your dad. Like Nina said earlier, if it was up to him, he would probably have like a 6-piece band up in the hospital. Man, it's guitars and everything. But yeah, just salute to all of you guys and everything that you're doing. And I don't know if we're still going uphill with this or if we're like going downhill now. You never know what tomorrow is going to bring. So, I just pray that you guys can, first of all, continue to stay safe, most importantly, but just, continue to find the strength to keep doing what you guys do every day. I really commend you guys. And I thank you guys for coming on and sharing all this great information. I don't know where the heck my co-host went. Who knows at this point? But again, I really appreciate you guys. And if this continues to go into like another phase where 3 to 6 months down the line, it's still going and we still don't see an end in sight, we may actually do a part 2 to this and bring you guys back if you're willing to do so.
Yeah, it was awesome conversation.
Absolutely.
Definitely a good conversation to have after the vaccine. So.
Yeah.
Oh, and at that point, I heard it'll be Dr. Corbin, so.
Hopefully. Yes, I have to work on my dissertation now.
Absolutely, yes. And that's why I was trying to get off of here because I know you said you had a paper to do. So I appreciate you taking some time to hang with us. Again, thank you guys so much. It's been so much information. And
thank you.
I'm not going to say that we scratched the surface, but there's so much more information that you guys could have given. We could probably do this for another 2 or 3 hours. So we might actually do another part 2 and invite you guys if you're available. I definitely appreciate you. But I just want to thank everybody that tuned in with us live on Facebook. I'm going to have the posting of this video and the audio available for you guys if you want to see it later on. Other than that, go Ravens. I love y'all. They're winning or they're about to go up. But just enjoy your night and thanks everybody. We appreciate you.
Thank you. Thanks,
All
everyone.
right. Bye-bye.
Bye.